Hello, listeners. Thank you for joining us today. A colleague turned very dear friend is joining our discussion. Today's guest on the PeopleNova podcast put emotionally intelligent leadership practices to work for her in the mid-90s before it was a buzzword, demonstrating emotions have a place at work when channeled with intention. Stick around because we're going to cover that and more while chatting with Jessica Harrison, an IP attorney who helps startups turn thoughts into things. So great story of how Jessica and I met. Jessica and I met in law school. I was actually her mentor. The school assigned kind of buddies to help the incoming class matriculate and sort things out and the ropes of how to succeed in law school, I guess. I don't know. Did I help you succeed in law school? I'm not quite sure if I was successful in law school.
You did. And here's the main reason why, Rachel. You had to talk to me. You were assigned to talk to me, and you took that seriously. But my experience at law school, being a non-traditional student and being almost 50 and twice the age of most of the other students, most of the people in my class looked at me and thought I was their mother's age and totally uncool and the last person that they, really wanted to talk to. So it was very hard for me to make friends at law school. I had to wait for other people to understand that, even though I was older, I was shoulder to shoulder and doing the same work. But you were there from the start, sending emails and asking how you could help and leaving amazing goodies in my mailbox and treats that you used to fix for us. I don't know if you remember that.
I did. Oh my God.
And all of those things just really helped because I had some human connection during that first year of law school. It was an extremely, extremely lonely time for me. I look back on that now, and I have joked with a couple of other people recently by saying that I had pandemic quarantine training. I went to law school at age 50. And I was alone for 3 years, basically, other than, you and a couple of other people who eventually became what I have carried forward with me are going to be lifelong friends. So if I've never thanked you for that, which I think that I have, thank you very much, especially for those gluten-free chocolate balls that you used to stick in my mailbox.
Oh my gosh. I thank you so much for that stroll down memory lane. I did take being a mentor very seriously. So thank you for acknowledging that. It was an important part of my life. Legacy is one of my, intrinsic values, right? I want to leave things better for the next generation, right? And I saw you and the other mentees that I had, kind of as an extension of legacy and being able to welcome you in and guide, this is what I found worked and this is what I didn't find work. And, out of that, out of my little, what's the group of ducklings? Out of my little, group of mentees.
Goslings,
my little ducklings, goslings, right?
Little mentees.
My little mentees. You and I really, really stuck. Like we really developed an amazing rapport that, aside from being assigned, really developed into a fantastic collegial friendship. Very close, and we talk about work and we talk about life and everything in between.
And we have adventures traveling.
Yeah. Yeah, that was.
Oh. Yeah. Well, and because of you and the path that you laid out and how you treated me as a mentor. Of course, the next year, as the tradition of the school, I had 3 people assigned to me to mentee, and out of those 3, one is now also a lifelong girlfriend of mine. Today is her birthday.
Yay.
And I just mailed out, although I don't have a great selection of cards in the house, but I just mailed out a birthday card to her. I feel kind of bad that didn't realize it till today. I looked at the phone and didn't
It's okay.
get it
It
out
gets
earlier.
postmarked today. It totally counts.
Totally counts. Totally counts. Well, it's a milestone one for her because it's her 30th, and she's kind of depressed that she's celebrating her 30th birthday during a pandemic. So
Yeah.
I thought a card would cheer her up.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. So leaning into the topic of the podcast is just that. The human side of business relationships and, work relationships that turn into sometimes friendships, right? When you have the right openness and the right level of transparency and sharing and trust, I feel. So that's why I chat with all my closest colleagues and very interesting people in my world. Because I think we all have something to share for the next generation, right? For the next batch of leaders or entrepreneurs, which is the space that I'm primarily focused in. And I know that you touch on a lot of creatives and inventors as, an incredibly successful patent attorney.
Right.
So when you hear the phrase like, we do business with other humans, it's not business to business, it's really human to human. What does that mean to you?
The first time I heard you use that phrase, I paused and just let it pass because it registered to me so much as a statement of the obvious. That's how I've always viewed my work. It's always about relationships. And in pondering that, there are really a very small number. I can only think of one so far, ways of doing business where I don't think a human is directly involved. And that is managing a stock account through online where I have set controls and a computer is executing the algorithms. Mm-hmm. But other than that, whether you think about it or not, everything we do is, there's a human touch in it. And those relationships, certainly in the practice of law, certainly in the startups that I see, in the businesses that I work with as an attorney, and in my former career, my prior career, there certainly as a manager and, as a leader in a federal agency, everything was human related.
Mm-hmm.
Those interpersonal relationships.
I love the stories you tell. Totally agree. I love the stories you tell where you're like, wow, I was practicing emotional intelligence before it was a thing. And tell us about it. And meditation. Tell us about it, because I think, it came into my vocabulary when I was still in university. And so it was kind of new and it was buzzwordy, right? And it stayed, right? So did it graduate from buzzword status? I don't know, but it's still with us, right? And I think we're constantly reminding folks that we interact with of, emotional awareness, practicing empathy,
right.
leaning into the human side. But I wanted to chat with you because it was so obvious for you, right? So hopefully, sharing some of your stories, our listeners can have that click.
Sure. Two come to mind right away. And we're going to go back in time. Step back, if you will, with me. I graduated graduate school in 1987, and I went to work at the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. And so that is a job that is not very team related. The actual work product is very individualized. But at the same time, you are grouped in groups of employees that work in similar technologies, and then there is a manager. So there is a unit aspect to it. These units of anywhere from 12 to 20 employees that worked on related technologies. And in 1996, April 1st, because I still joke about it was just a joke that I got selected to be a manager. April 1st, 1996, I was selected to become a manager, and I inherited a work group of about 16 men. And quite a few of them were 25-year veteran employees. So they were definitely of the World War II generation. And some even older than that. And there weren't a lot of people my age, and certainly not younger. And I was, one of, at that time, one of 4 women in a group of about 200 employees. And so there weren't a lot of female engineers in this work environment. And so I was part of the first wave of women that were being promoted into leadership roles.
Pioneer.
And so I had to kind of, in this environment, in the patent office, which is, we all had to be scientists or engineers, most with advanced degrees. It was a very legally intensive job, but the legal training was, we didn't have to be lawyers, but we had legal training. Mm-hmm. And so it was a very interesting area. And of course, I worked in the area of games and amusements. And as an electrical engineer, I was responsible for the video game technology, but I was managing board games, tennis rackets, golf clubs, mechanical technologies as well. And so I knew immediately that I had a difficult task in front of me because, there were 30-year veterans who were of a different generation, who weren't initially favorable to taking direction from a young woman. Mm-hmm. And so I couldn't just come in and bark out orders the way the supervisor previously had done. He had earned their trust and their respect. And I knew that I was going to have a difficult task in earning their trust and respect. So I did a couple of things. One was engaging with each one on a daily and individual basis. And I started giving them surveys, even though they didn't really realize it, because this is something I had used while in graduate school teaching my students to figure out who was a visual learner and who was an audio learner. And so I understood the value of knowing about the people I was working with and how to approach. And so I found some surveys, and some of the younger employees happily, would take the surveys at the time. Now, mind you, we were just getting desktop computers at this point in time. We were not, the government was a little behind in that. This was the mid-90s, but we were not all electronic. So it wasn't like I could say, just go online and take
click
the survey.
Link and
click a link.
Right.
I had to obtain the surveys and print them out and copy them and say, hey, are you interested in doing this? And then I had to mail it off and get it scored and come back. And so, but I had a couple of them. And what I used to do is engage these employees in conversations. And then I would ask them questions from the surveys and note their answers and then write them down later. And then get the feedback. So they were surveyed, but they didn't really know they were being surveyed. So I got a feel for their learning styles. I got a feel for their communication styles. I got a feel for, who responded well to top-down authority and who responded well to collaboration, and who just wanted to be listened to first, and who was a problem solver, and, all these different styles of these employees. So I started using those techniques on them and, one by one, won them over. Another story that comes to mind that was kind of controversial at the time, but I didn't care, was I called them all together and I said, a meeting, and I said, I'm a nap taker, which is really my way of saying I meditate, but I already wore tie-dye shirts and they knew I was kind of they knew I went to Grateful Dead shows, and so they kind of worried about me that way.
Oh, she's one of those.
Yeah, I was one of those. Yes. So I didn't want to say I meditate, but I meditated. I have practiced yoga and meditation since I was 11 years old. Not always regularly, not always on a daily basis, but most of my life regularly and daily. And it's something that I learned from my oldest brother's girlfriend at the time. And so, and my oldest brother, legitimate hippie. Okay. and
everything.
Exactly. Yes. And it was his hippie girlfriend who, taught me about incense and meditation and yoga and, set me on a certain path in life. But anyway, so I didn't want to tell him that I meditated, but I did. And I always took 20 to 30 minutes in the middle of my day to turn off the phone, close the door, darken the blinds, sit quietly. Sometimes it was a 20-minute nap. Sometimes it was just a meditation. But basically, I announced to him 2 to 3 o'clock every day, my door is closed, my phone is off, I take a nap. I'm not going to be looking for you. Please don't come looking for me. I'm not going to knock on your door. I'm not going to wonder what you're doing. I do this every day because it refreshes me and it makes me more productive. And I encourage you all to try it. I don't care if you sleep on the job. Do what you need to do. And I don't think anyone had ever said that to them. And
did they pick it up right away?
Some of them did.
Okay.
Some of them didn't. But over time, pretty much everybody was like, that nap in the early afternoon is a pretty good idea. I kind of like that. And a year later, I'm sitting at my performance review, and my supervisor is wanting to know why my art unit has the highest production. We went from like middle of the pack to the top performing group, and I did that in my first year and a half as the manager. And she was really amazed because most of these employees were older and usually stubborn and set in their ways and not willing to do more. And she wanted to know what I had done. And so I laughed and I told her, we take naps every day. I let them sleep. And she was horrified. She was like, shocked. What?
Who does that?
Who does that? And I said, well, I do. It makes me more productive. That's why I don't come to any meeting that you schedule at 2:00. I just don't, because that's my meditation time. And so she was all upset. And I said, but the numbers don't lie.
It's effective.
It's effective. And I would like to continue doing this. I'm glad that you know now, because But there's a reason why if you come down the hallway where my people or my employees sit 2 to 3 in the afternoon, every door is closed.
Ghost town.
And it's for a reason, because we take a regrouping nap. Mm-hmm. Whether they nap, whether they meditate, whatever, I don't know. I don't care. I am fine with them closing their door and taking an hour in the middle of the day. I get more than an extra hour's worth of work out of them for it. Look at the numbers. And so,
Jessica, I love that story. Like on so many levels, right? It just,
yeah.
And this was back in the late 90s, early 2000s, before it was hip and trendy and cool. And we had all these buzzwords around like self-care and things like that. You were definitely a rebel and a trendsetter at the same time.
I paid for it from time to time too, but.
Well, yeah. When people don't understand what's happening around them, they often, are quick to judge or say, right. I don't need that. Therefore you don't need that either. But I appreciate your self-awareness, right? Of what you needed. I preach that a lot. I advocate for that a lot with folks that I interact with, is understand what you need. And if you need a 20-minute meditation to regroup or a power nap, you do you, right? Because you're not going to be of service to anyone. You do you, right? And then, you know, you were incredibly transparent with your team, and you're saying, look, this is what I do.
This is what I do.
And this is for me because I know I need this. And then you gave them, you know, permission. I put air quotes, like permission or the opportunity to also do that as well in a trusting way, right? Instead of the 4-hour, you know, I'm just going to fall asleep at my desk and not do anything. People respected it, which I believe in the best out of people. I really do. People respected that. And they were like, oh yeah, that makes sense. I get, you know, I would appreciate that.
The supervisor that had been of this unit before I was, which was my supervisor, when we came in the mornings, we had to go to the supervisor's office and we had to physically sign in a logbook and jot down our time of arrival. Oh. And our supervisor used to stand there. He had a big clock on, it was a lectern with the sign-in sheet and a clock. And he would stand there and greet us and say, hello, good morning. You know, but I know, this was so horrible. But at the same time, this is the way the government was run. And
it happened. It's real.
It had been done this way for years. But like, you know, traffic in the DC area is notoriously horrific. And there would be mornings where I would do my best and I would arrive at 8:37, 8:40, 8:41. And he would stand there and make me take an hour of leave because I was late. And so I would be charged my personal leave time for traffic. And he would say, you know, if you would get up earlier, you wouldn't have to do that. But I was already spending an hour and a half in the car to travel 8 miles. And it just used to infuriate me that he was that much of a clock watcher. You know, it's like, why couldn't he let it slide 10 minutes?
Lacks, you know, all kinds of empathy and understanding.
So the first thing I did, or one of the first things I did when I took over the art unit, is I replaced the ink pen that was there at the sign-in sheet with a box of crayons.
You rebel.
And I let everybody pick whatever color they wanted to mark their X with or sign their name with. And I did not watch the sign-in, sign-out sheets. And it's so hilarious because that one came back on me years later, like 4 or 5 years later. There was a union suit against management about sign-in, sign-out sheets. And it was in the fight for comp time and flex time for them to do away with this archaic time tracking system and the requirement for physical signature, because that was kind of the first step in allowing work at home, was getting rid of that requirement for the physical signature. And so the union filed a lawsuit, and they had a discovery process where they took all of the sign-in, sign-out sheets from the managers for a couple of years and went through them. Oh, and apparently the lawyers just were like, what the fuck is up with this unit that's got crayons? What's going on here?
Oh my God. That's awesome. You never told me that.
No. I was called to justify why I allowed my employees to draw hearts and sign in any creative way that they wanted. But again, it was an initial change that I implemented that was more human, that was more respectful of who they were as individuals, and looking for a different way to kind of, meet the requirements of the regulation, but allow them some semblance of fun in their day. I mean, we were the games and amusement technology area, and
Oh my God, of course, it makes perfect sense.
I examined video games, and it was illegal to play games on my computer when they gave me one. And it was just like, how can I do my job?
This is called product testing, people. I need to do this.
Exactly. So, the supervisor before me had always used this. There were certain projects that were just, punished to the newest hire, and that was just the way it was done. And I came in and I'm like, nope, I'm not going to pick on the new people that way. That doesn't build a team. We're the games art unit. We're going to roll dice. We're going to draw straws to see who gets
Jessica,
projects that no one wants. And I also did things like, I would take them when they performed well. For a quarter, I would say, okay, I'm buying you all lunch, and we're going to go to Dave and Buster's, and we're going to play games at lunch as a group, and we're going to call it research to make us do our job better. And, and then I figured out a way to take them all to Las Vegas for a week. And, I pushed the limits. For the 15 years that I was a manager, I constantly pushed the limits on these things to find ways to bring that collectiveness and that camaraderie. It got more challenging as we switched to work at home environment, because there at the patent office, we pioneered work at home for the federal government. We started allowing that in 2000. And just to give you for example of how widespread it was, when I left to go to law school in 2011, I managed, I was a matrix manager with 3 managers, and we were managing 80 employees in a matrix environment. And of those 80 employees, 70 worked remotely.
Wow.
Never saw them, never came into the office. It was that.
Never dealt with DC traffic.
Never. I mean, I had employees completely across the country. So I started managing remote employees in the early 2000s. I became one in 2011. I have worked at home as a lawyer. I pioneered it for a large law firm that I first worked for, and I have a firm now where we're remote. We're in DC, Philadelphia, and Boston. So, but there's still things that you can do in those environments to build that same sense of camaraderie and teamwork. And so, it's just
you have to be intentional about it, right? Like
you do. You have to think about it. You have to actively manage.
Right. It's not just like, I read this blog and it said that Steve's job did this, so I'm going to do that too. No. This is different conditions. Right. These are different people. These are different humans, different mission, different purpose, different company, right? One of the things that I heard you say that I want to double back to is you were the games department, art and games. Mm-hmm. So let's go play games, right? Like, to you and me, it's obvious, but it's alignment, right? Like, this is our purpose. So let's go do something that aligns with our purpose, right? Like super intentional, not just accidental and like, oh yeah, that was team bonding. Let's do trust falls. Yeah, no.
I'll give you another, for example. There was an employee that was transferred into my area from another area. There's backstory there, but we'll leave that for another time. But so I handed her, I gave her a case that I thought was a simple case. It involved golf, and she was not, she was an immigrant. And so she comes back after she reads the case and she says, can I ask you questions? And I said, certainly. And she says, what is par? And I said, okay, what do you know about golf? And she says, well, let's start there. What is golf? Oh. And I realized that I had an employee who was not familiar with the basics of this game called golf. And I was like, okay. Do you know what tic-tac-toe is? English was not her first language. And, so basically through the conversation that we had on her second day in my area, it came to it became very apparent that she knew nothing about games. And I said, okay, Thursday, we're all going to lunch. We're going to have an art unit lunch. We're going to lunch. We're going to take an hour. We're going to lunch. And again, Dave and Buster's, she was one of the trips. And I asked each employee, I said, I'd like you to welcome to our unit. And when we go to lunch, I would like you to take her with you and play your favorite game with her.
Oh my God, how great.
Whether it's whack-a-mole, whether it's, and explain it to her, because we have to teach her about gameplay if she is going to be successful integrating into this technology area.
Uh-huh.
So, very subtle. She didn't realize that this, it was a welcome lunch.
Yeah.
But it was in the environment where we went to blow off steam to do. And see, because I could call it research, I could get an extra 2 hours. So we could go for 3 hours to have lunch and play games because it was related to our technology, and I could put it under the examiner education now.
Totally, 100% aligned. I fully support this.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, what are my tools? What do I need? How do I make it happen in the best way for the most number of people? That's the way I used to show up to work. So
I like to say constraints force creativity. You're never going to have 100% of all the time in the world, or all the money in the world, or all the fill in the blank, whatever you think you need, right? And so having constraints really forces us to think creatively about either minimum needs, or how do I help this another human who doesn't understand US Americanized games, right? I'm sure in her home country she knew of games and she played games. They were just different. So teaching her in a way that has fun and it's a memorable experience is fantastic.
Yes. Well, I had learned about that from the fact that I don't know if any of your listeners will remember this at all, but in the late 90s, a patent was issued to a method of swinging, and it was highly controversial and laughed at on the evening news because somebody, as a joke, a patent attorney, had watched his kid pushing the swing from side to side.
Okay.
And getting the swing to go sideways. And just for yucks, he filed a patent application on a method of doing that in the name of his 6-year-old kid. And that application landed on the desk of a non-US immigrant employee who did the research, as we were trained to do, in what was documented as prior art, didn't find that description. So he followed the law and issued the patent. And it was controversial because every kid who's playing on a swing has figured out that the physics, if they push side to side, they can make the swing go side to side. And so it was this laughing stock when it hit the evening news, and held up as a statement for the ridiculousness of government and everything else. But no one ever thought about the human aspect of the fact that no one looked at that employee. And I know that employee, and I, in talking with them afterwards, learned that they never played on a swing as a child. So they didn't have that personal experience to draw from.
Interesting.
And that they were actually being an exemplary employee in doing their job the way they were supposed to do the job. And yet, that happened. So you have to always take into account that human aspect. Now, when I took the art unit to lunch, a part of it was because I didn't want that experience in my art unit, because I didn't want to be the supervisor called to answer to the director of commerce and hire about why these things happened. So I learned from that experience of another employee what I needed to do to best protect my employees. So there's a little bit of backstory on that story. So.
Oh, it's great. It's great. I could sit here and talk with you all day. I can. So what, we'll spare our listeners. Maybe we'll bring back for part 2. But before we wrap up, I always love asking my guests, what is your favorite art? And there's a quote that comes behind this, and it really dials into the empathy piece. It's a quote from Darren Walker. It says, "Without art, there is no empathy. And without empathy, there is no justice."
Wow, I have never heard that quote, and I absolutely love that, Rachel.
I love it.
Yeah, I mean, you tapped on this earlier, and I think it's clear. I'm a creative. I have been a creative my whole life. I have had the struggle between being both a creative and curious, which is my draw to science and engineering. And I have absolutely found a place in the world where I love my career. I love being on the cutting edge of turning thoughts into things, which is what innovation is. And I love that people create and pull things out of imagination and make them real. But it is exactly the same process, whether it's a new, I got an orange phone, by the way.
Favorite.
Whether it's a new piece of technology or whether, it's a new piece of art, it is the exact same process. It is an idea. It's a thought that becomes a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's this exact same process. And so for me, I love the study of that process. I think everything is art. I think our lives are art. I think I see art in nature. I see art everywhere. I see creativity everywhere, but I look for it. I even see and actually acknowledge the great creativity of tragedy and pandemic. And, when I hear of a horrific, I know this is kind of weird, but when I hear of a horrific car wreck or murder or something, I'm like, oh, that's creative. Nobody's killed people that way. Because
okay, that's weird.
but the common thread is the process of life, which is, we're all out here on the leading edge and creating our lives individually from our own perspectives, which are different from everyone else. And yet at the exact same time, we are all so interconnected. We are, and that is never more apparent than right now.
Yes.
It amazes me. I saw this morning all these things popping up on my Facebook feed about, hey, you just got this money, go spend it on American things. It's an American stimulus, and it's like, are you not being slapped in the face right now how every human on this planet is connected to each other?
The entire globe is connected.
The entire everything. We are a part of each other and we touch each other constantly. And that's what this pandemic is showing us. And yet so many people are still throwing up walls. I don't get that, but that's a different political rant.
Yeah. No, it's fear. It's fear, and it's not understanding empathy. I have to tell myself in order to stay sane, because I see it too and I get frustrated.
Well, for me, it's a cry to the artists, because art is what unites us and helps us see that. The fact that we can all understand a rhythm in a song, the fact that we can all understand and pause at the beauty of a sunset. so that's art. It's for me, I'm visual. I'm a visual person. I like color and visual art. So anything that catches my eye or wants me to look at it is what I'm going to go to as first as my favorite art. Followed closely by music.
Mm-hmm.
Music is integral to my life. I'm not a musician so much, but I like listening, and I love the fact that there are only 12 notes, and think about all of the different music that we have that comes out of different combinations of that very limited palette.
Oh yeah, it's just exponential. All the different musicians and artists and mediums and just amazing.
Yeah. But visual and color, and I think because we were talking about this the other day, my current favorite pandemic time waste is naming colors on colornames.org.
Okay, FYI listeners, if you haven't done it, go name a color. I have my color. Jessica has her color. It's great. It's super fun.
I mean, I'm in there voting. That's they've expanded colors out to 16 million colors that can be distinguished visually, and there's about 14 million that still need to be named. So, yeah.
We will put that in the notes for our listeners to go click on the link and join in the naming of colors, because it helps with our empathy. I love it. Yes. Thank you so much for your time. This has been great. I cannot wait to catch up in person over a cocktail or coloring or something. But I appreciate all the insight that you have shared with our listeners. Folks, if you have any other inspiration or have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'll put you in touch with Jessica. I'll give you the link to name your own color, and we will see you in another setting. Thank you, Jessica.
All right. Thanks, Rachel.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you for joining us on the PeopleNova Podcast. My name is Rachel O'Neill. The team here at PeopleNova Human Capital would love to hear from you. We are always curious to hear from our listeners. So go ahead and send us an email, podcast@peoplenovahc.com, with your workplace questions or suggestions for who you'd like to see on our show. If you send us an audio memo, we may include your question on the show. Lastly, we are here to amplify. Our guests are amazing entrepreneurs, and we want you to forward our newsletter to someone in your network who needs to know the amazing things our guests are doing, so together we can make an impact. Thank you so much. Take care, and we will see you next time.